So that's where this person would come in handy as well. Councillor Hammond?
Your Worship, thank you. Peter, I don't know if you noticed, but during your submission of the report, all eyes of council were on you. Each one of us knew what was in this report. I mean, we've gone over it 100 times over this weekend. We've had all kinds of conversations about it, and you've really helped clear up a lot of questions that I'm sure we all had with respect to how you presented the report. I feel that I want to talk about a couple areas, and I feel like I'm challenging you because you're the author of the report, and that's not the case. When I make my submissions, it's trying to weigh the balance of the need for some of these positions, and then believe me, I understand, based on your information, that we do need them. But in my mind, I try to weigh that against the cost. And when at first blush, when I looked at this report, $400,000, wow. But you've helped rationalize some of that. But there are a couple areas that I do want to talk about. With respect to the bylaw enforcement, Councilor Wilkerson touched on a couple of things. With respect to how much weight do we have in our bylaws, how much weight do these individuals have if they do go out? And I would ask, and I understand that the bylaws are online, even though I have difficulty trying to pull them off, I'll be honest with you. I've looked at some different ones with respect to garbage pickup and times and those kinds of things. But is it possible to look at a contract person for this position? I mean, measurably, the workload should be in the summertime. When there's signs out that need to be picked up on those kinds of things. And my thought along that line as well is that I think that if we get some, and one of the questions with respect to bylaws, do we have the right to tell people they can't park their bikes on the sidewalk? Do we have the right to tell them they can't drive their bicycles down the sidewalk? Having said that, then maybe when we look at this person, whether it be a contract person or whether we do go the full gambit to hire somebody full-time, we could put them on some different shifts whereby they start at noon on Thursday and work till 9 o'clock at night to help clear up some of this. And I throw that out as a form of suggestion. Those are my thoughts with respect to the bylaw. But now I want to talk about tourism. And that's difficult in light of the report that Janine put in. I mean, believe me, if we thought we were going to get somebody that was going to generate the same positive attitude and the same feedback that we get from Janine, it would be great. But, and I say but, currently we pay TWEPI in Windsor, which I'm told it doesn't do a great deal for us. A lot of money.
My personal opinion. Yeah.
Pardon?
My personal opinion.
Well, that's where I got it. And if there was a chance of opting out of TWEPI, the funds that we put into TWEPI would certainly cover the cost of hiring our own person for tourism. Right now, the Chamber has a segment of tourism, even though it's not their mandate, but they have a segment of tourism. They do hand out brochures and literature of that nature. I know currently Point Pelee does their own tourism advertising. I know through our complex, we should be doing our own sports. How much of it gets done, I'm unsure. We are going to be able to attract people to our new soccer fields, especially hoping that we can get some soccer tournaments when our new field house is completed. That'll certainly help to attract tournaments and do those kinds of things. And also to the marina, it's my understanding that our marina manager should go out and try to attract some people both from Michigan and Ohio and those other places. Even though they tell me that even though the American money is high right now, that those people don't want to necessarily come this way. For the need of a passport, both coming here and going back, they're reluctant to come. So on the issue of tourism, in light of some of the things that I've said, I would like us to see first, to see if there's any way that we can opt out of TWIPI. And that would certainly provide us with the funds. I currently don't know what we pay them, but I know is it in excess of $100,000 a year?
No, it's just under.
Under 100,000. Well, that'll certainly cover the 97,000 we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter, those are my comments. And again, the other positions, I can certainly see the need. I come in here a fair bit, and I see these individuals Dave and some of the ladies working long hours, and that's not necessary. I agree with those. Thank you.
Mr. Neufeld?
Okay. Councillor Wilkinson said the same thing about having to read the report and reread the report, and I'm glad that you did, because I wrote the report and rewrote the report and rewrote the report. And so, Councillor Hammond, I don't take offense to being questioned. I present this in full belief that this is in the best interest of the municipality. And sometimes the cost is the cost of driving a new vision forward. So I don't take offense. I like to hear all comments. The idea of a contract person, Ruth and I have had that discussion. If that's an interim step that council would like to see, I think we could probably work with that. But that's not my recommendation, because I feel that we have enough work, we have enough direction. You spoke about the extended hours. That is exactly the model that we were looking for. So my recommendation is still to go with a full-time person, but if it's always council's prerogative to direct otherwise. With respect to the tourism position, I understand why you're saying what you are if we could opt out of TWEPI. But why would we jeopardize moving forward on what has been identified as one of the main components for Leamington, being tourism, simply because we're not getting what we think is value for our money at TWEPI? In fact, I would submit that the argument is exactly the opposite. That if we're not getting value, if we don't feel we're getting value, and this is based on our future, then we put our money where our mouth is and we go get our own. And that's how we have Janine. You indicated that there are others in the municipality, Point Pelee, who is doing their own advertising. And they are. And my understanding is that they get approximately 250,000 people through their gates every year. But they're not stopping here. And why is that? I believe in part it's because we haven't taken the initiative to tell them what we're all about, that we are new, that we've got something happening here in Leamington. So, again, I believe that this is in the best interest of the municipality. I understand your concerns. When I saw the number, I gasped a little myself. But what makes the level of staff that we have today the right number? What's it based on? Previous years. Have we been running thin for all these years? I would submit we have, because I've looked back at the reports, so much so that in 2012 we had to have a consultant come in who is telling us this is what we need. So I know it's difficult to move from a base to something new. That's because change is difficult. Change is difficult because you have to make two decisions. You have to choose to leave your current structure, and then you have to choose the new structure. So that's two decisions. Staying status quo, and you'll notice I use that in my report, is only one decision. It's always easier to make one decision than two. But what I read from council is that status quo is no longer the acceptable standard in Leamington. And I think that's what we're hearing in the press. And I still submit that this is the right way to go. But I appreciate your comments.
If I could, before I go to Councillor Verbeke, just a couple of things that you mentioned, John, and I don't disagree with you. But the Chamber does do tourism work, but their tourism work is extremely passive. When we look at TWEPI, to me, that's passive as well, except when they're doing all the work that they do for the City of Windsor. which is where I lose my patience with that organization. And my guesstimate is we're about, and Ramona could probably dig into it deeper than I could, but I would say we're probably about 90 grand a year that we as the municipality of Leamington, that's our portion through the county that goes to TWEPI. And do I believe we get our money's worth? Not so much. But they are an umbrella group, right? We do the same thing with Weed Sea, and we pay a lot more money to Weed Sea, and yet we've hired our own economic development officer for those very same reasons. They're the umbrella group, but we need a focused person here for Leamington. And that's how I see, I'm supporting obviously the tourism position, because I see the huge potential if you think about all the list of things that tourism includes. And we're not at the start of it, we're already in it, because we've got that sports complex. We've got the soccer pitch, we've got the ball diamonds, we've got the trails, we've got Point Pelee, we've got the waterfront, we've got Pelee Island. We're already in it. Anyway, that's just my position on where you were coming from with TWEPI. And if I could opt out, I would, but we can't. But why not focus on Leamington like we have in the economic development too? So that would be my comeback on that. I have Councillor Verbicki.
The Mayor, thanks. Just two quick questions. Under finance and business, I just want to know if the new software program is up to speed, and under the same heading, if our maternity leave person will be returning.
Ramona?
Our maternity leave person has returned, and our new budget software is in process. We are waiting for their IT people to speak to our IT people.
That help? Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Got a few things I want to say. But before I get into my questions, I just want to explain, I guess, what would be my point of view. And having listened to the facts and figures of the income levels and poverty levels and so on, we have to be cognizant of the fact that everyone who sits up here does not make poverty level wage. And when you look at the numbers up there, there's not a poverty wage up there. So that is why, in my opinion, that this is such a difficult decision to make. The theory of it is sound, and I'm fine with the theory of it, but the application for me is what's the difficult part. Because I think back to last week when we had the people sitting in here, some of who can afford that $12,000 assessment for their sewer and some who won't. So the next week we sit up here and we look at wages of $97,000 and $76,000, and it's really hard for me to sit here and be up here when so many of the people aren't there. So that's the reason for the difficulty, and I believe, having talked to others, I believe that's the difficulty for each one of us. So we're the ones that have to come up with the decision of how far we go with the theory. And then I also want to make a couple of comments, which I guess are slash questions, and I'm not being disrespectful in any way. I'm just trying to explain to you how I feel and how I feel the burden of a decision like this. I would love to say, sure. I'm sure if we were council in a community where most of the houses were 500,000, we'd still have quibbles and, chirping, but it would be an easier decision to make. So that being said, I just have a couple of questions. Do we know, Peter, with the amount of building that's happened in this past year, I guess that was asked last week, wasn't it, by Larry? We have no idea what kind of an increase to the assessment.
Not yet.
But we do have an idea that there is going to be an increase to our tax base. So that already somewhat dulls the blow of the $400,000.
And another question, and maybe I should ask it, maybe I shouldn't, and if you need, I shouldn't have, you can just kick me. I know there have been some positions that have been eliminated due to retirement and things like that in the past, say, 2 years, year. And you're saying also that administration will continue to attempt to reduce the financial impact through further internal organizational review and improvements. So are you seeing that perhaps there will be some positions not filled in other departments where there's less demand when people leave through attrition type reasons? I know that's a very run-on sentence, but if you could, if you don't mind, then I still, if I may go on with this, I just would like to explain my thought process.
Mr. Neufeld?
Well, that's a very good question. It depends on, obviously, the skill set of the person who's retiring, but that sentence is there for a reason. And we are going to continue to look at the positions that are at the municipality, and if positions don't make sense anymore, then we will be we certainly will turn our minds to not replacing those positions when somebody retires. And there are some that have already been identified.
Great, thanks. And have there been some that have not been replaced that have been retired in the last bid, or no? Because I'm trying to think if we're already working at a negative one factor, perhaps.
We finished our last term in a negative. We were
Okay.
down 2.5 employees, if I
Okay.
remember correctly, the numbers.
Okay.
But this is today, so.
Yeah, no, but I just
Yep.
trying to justify. Okay, so then I want to just go through my thought processes. As far as finance goes, I really like the fact that you put in the number of overtime hours. And I would really like to see in a year's time, if these positions are approved, whether they're now or whether they're at budget, I would really like to see what overtime hours are in a year's time, just so that we could have a measurement of some kind to see if our decision was fruitful, shall we say. So anyway, so both of those, I see those folks working. I know they work, and that's not fair. And I also don't want to lose good employees because we've made a burden that's too heavy. As you know, excuse me, I didn't think this way. Myself and my colleague, Rick, did not think that we needed to do that. Added an extra person in finance. But I have come to see finance in a different light, and I do believe we're on a different road. And I like the road that we're on. And if we can make that road a better one to travel for our employees, I'm with you on that. I also want to make it easier for the frontline customer to have a better experience when it comes to inquiries about taxes or fines or whatever. And I think the only way to do that is have more people on the forefront. The IT I don't have a quibble with either. I think that if Dave decided to move to Italy and not come back, we'd be really in a bind. Or even if he wants to go for 3 weeks. I think you always have to have a plan B, and we don't have a plan B, so really I don't think we have a choice in that. And I know you didn't expect me to struggle with the bylaw officer position, but I am at this point. I realize you said that the culture has to change, but I personally haven't seen it. As you know, I've submitted a number of complaints that I've seen no movement on and no response to me. Excuse me. So I feel that maybe there has to be a little bit of longer time changing the culture before we hire another person. I don't think I can add anything more to that. I do believe probably by this time next year, yes, but I still don't think we're there yet. I'd like to see, if you can recall, Mr. Mayor, we had figures on responses and orders from our bylaw office department. I believe it was a year and a half ago. And at that time, I spoke to the fact that the numbers to me were not good enough. To me, I'd like to see some numbers to see how many orders we put out, how many are followed through, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't had that. And like I said, at that time, if you worked in the private sector and handed in figures like that, it wouldn't work. It just would not be acceptable. Before we do that position, I would like to see some facts and figures. I would like to see that mess that's across the street on Talbot West is still a mess and nothing's happened. Further down the road, nothing has happened. I want to see some things happen a little quicker. Like I said, I believe the culture needs to be changed, but until that changes, I'm not in favor yet of an extra person. The tourism officer, I know we need to go there, but when Janine said that it's down the list, I didn't know if we were there yet for that either. Of the driving factors, remember the driving forces. When you take all of the facts and figures into consideration, it's not a hard and fast number 5. So to me, I wonder too if we're putting the cart before the horse at this point in time. I do believe there will be one needed. Do we need one for 2016? I'm not convinced. So those are my thought processes. And I see that the recommendation is that we approve in principle. If we approve in principle and go to budget, at budget we can make the hard and fast decisions then, correct? So even if we approve these in principle and we get some different figures and some different things happen, then we can still make the final. Okay. I believe Mr. Jacobs probably has something to say.
Okay. But Mr. Neufeld, do you want to respond to some of the points there?
Yes, thank you. I don't make light of the amount of money that these positions receive. So it's a small thing, but those are not the wages. That's the complete package. So a third of what's up there is in benefits. It still comes out of the taxpayers' pay, but I think it's important for people to understand that's not a $97,000 a year job. That's it's 1/3 of that is the benefits. I'm glad you raised the issue about it being subject to budget, because that was also on my notes here. But you'll notice that I haven't said that yet tonight, because I think that this decision first and foremost needs to be made on principle. And that is, what is an acceptable number of hours that people work without compensation? We just need to make sure that we're understanding that, yes, there's a cost associated with this, but there's also a culture cost. And I raise that because I put the numbers in for finance, the numbers of overtime, but don't gloss over the following sentence, which says this pattern is also throughout the organization as it relates to our non-union and management staff. Same pattern. You can grab any of the other areas. I'm also glad that you raised the issue of customer service, because that was an important component of the strategic planning session. And that's why I answered it earlier. And a big part of the customer service improvements can come from increase in automation and having information available. But I'm going to address first the issue of the tourism. I believe that what Janine was, I understand what you're getting at, it's number 5. But we've never done anything with it. The total amount of effort that we've put into tourism was giving the chamber a $20,000 grant and saying, can you hand out our pamphlets at the Big Tomato? That's not, that's small T tourism, not big T tourism, right? So I think that in fairness, to say that, I think what you need to look at with respect to the tourism is that there is a great deal of potential there because we haven't turned our minds to it in a way like we did with economic development. And then finally, the bylaw officer position. I've already said it a couple of times, we're already pushing new requirements down onto the bylaws officers, but essentially what I'm hearing I'm having a little difficulty with, because what council wants is more enforcement, faster enforcement, and we're saying we can give that to you, but we need another person, but we're saying, but we're not going to give that to you until we see it. Our bylaws officers do an awful lot of work that doesn't result in orders because they're good at it. They're out there and saying, hey, we need to find a solution to this. You heard tonight, what a great way to help somebody who's in a position where they're running a business contrary to our bylaws, and rather than just writing them up, we hand them a business card and we say, and if you want to develop this in the proper way, get a hold of Janine. Our bylaws officers do an awful lot of work that doesn't result in orders, but there is an awful lot of work being done. So, I understand council's apprehension, but I still recommend that we have to move forward with this, and you know what? Then hold me accountable. If we don't meet the numbers, if we don't get the responses. But here's what happens. I mean, we'll have one councillor call about long grass and another one calling about signs and another one calling about the facades. And we've got 2 officers supposed to be running in 3 directions, and in the meantime we've got illegal businesses setting up elsewhere. So, you know, we have to have, I remember Brian Sweet always saying, well, what's the priority? And one councillor's priority is not another councillor's priority. We see the work is there, we want to address it, we think that we can, but it requires another position. And I can't state it any clearer than that.
Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. A lot of discussion on this evening. I guess I'm fortunate to the point that when we did the review, I was part of that committee, along with the Deputy Mayor and I both were fortunate enough to sit on it. And these decisions that were brought forward and the recommendations that were there weren't just off the top. They took and dissected every supervisor, every manager, every director, down to, do they have money in their pocket, or are they, making change? So, and it was a very interesting one, and it identified a lot of the areas, and a lot of the changes were made as recommendations, and as stated in Peter's report, then along we came with the Hines scenario. So the implementations that were slated and what we're going to move forward with had to be put on hold because there was no way that we were going to be able to invest. And when the staff came forward and says, hey, we're going to sit here at 0, and all of a sudden we're going to go out and hire people. I think that was our late Mr. Atkin, was adamant about that one, and so forth. However, like the rest of the councillors here tonight, we went over this and page by page and piece by piece, and I spent quite a bit of time today with Councillor Hammond and I going over this whole thing from one end to the other. And I was pretty receptive to the first 3. I think, yeah, we needed them. The other 2 I was hinging on. And then tonight, and I mentioned earlier, I don't know whether it was by design or just by a fluke, that the presentations that were made by our health unit, by our economic development individuals, by the Chamber of Commerce, really led into this part of the evening. And after reviewing them and looking at them, it gave me a better understanding as to where we're really headed. And we made some bold moves recently, getting rid of development charges. We buying waterfront property. We're encouraging development. We want to put in more infrastructure. Well, to me now, infrastructure goes beyond pipes in the ground and water taps and so forth. Infrastructure means that we have to have the individuals in place internally to meet what we are intending on moving forward with. Development's coming online. And already I've had a developer come to me and say, excuse me, hey, it's taking me too long to get a permit. What's going on? Well, it's going to get worse, in my opinion, because there's a lot of development that's going to happen within the next year or two. We are, as was mentioned, customer service. If we're not able to provide in a timely fashion the demands that are going to be placed upon the staff here and administration, then we're going to fail. So what we're really moving forward in attempting to bring this forward, we're going to fail at it. We have to have those individuals and these programs in place. So to me, it's important. We're not a small town anymore. We're getting to be a big place here. We're evolving. We're a city. We're just on the verges of being a city. And we have to make these decisions now. We're looking down the road. We're not looking at next week, next year. Where are we going to be in a period of time? I'm getting to the stage now where I'm supportive of everything. However, we're getting back to the bylaw enforcement officer. And in that particular area, I agree, maybe we do need them. But I will hold someone's feet to the fire, our CAO, to show us that, as the deputy mayor said, show us the results. If we don't see the results, then maybe we have to eliminate it down the road. As far as the tourism officer goes, you know, and the finance departments and so forth, and going back to the finance and impact, I became aware a while back that we were unable to appeal the appeals that Impact brought forward. They were costing us money because you didn't have anyone in your department that was accessible or able to go and fight those appeals. They did cost us a significant amount of money. You know, so I mean, it was fine. I could go and appeal my CVA, and what happens? I got it. But nobody came back to appeal what I appealed. So that was a costly thing. The increase in taxes, well, we've held our taxes at zero. And I'm sure there's other efficiencies that we'll be able to find, that we'll be able to maintain a reasonable increase in our tax base. I've got faith in our administration and our CAO that we can do that. I really look forward to that. And I also think that even if we do okay all of these at budget time, and it costs us a significant amount of funds, we will adjust to the economic times, I'm sure. That if our construction falls off, or tourism falls off, or whatever takes place, we're still capable of adjusting to that like any other big business. If you're not making money in a department, or the department's costing you funding, then we peel back in those departments. So the only thing I can add to this, and listening to all the information that came forward tonight, I mean, without going through, yeah, we're burning out a lot of good people here. And we can't continue to do that, or we won't have those people to burn out. And I don't know how you've been able to keep them focused as much as we have been currently. I'll be supporting all of this evening, in principle, because I think it's the way to go. And I said I have faith in our administration and our directors and so forth, that we can make those adjustments as would be deemed necessary. So, thank you for the opportunity. And I also want to thank you and administration, because you guys have worked hard for this. And we've given accolades to Janine here tonight, but a lot of accolades need to go in other areas as well. These people that have worked, you know, without recognition. That's all for now.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Verbeke.
Thanks, Worthy Mayor. In, I guess, bylaw, does that come parking authority? Or parking attendants, does that come under bylaw?
What would be the descriptions of this new bylaw?
No, I guess, no, I'm sorry, Mary, that's not my point. My point is, we have tendered out, or we've subbed out our parking enforcement.
Correct.
So, and it seems to be working. I'll leave it at that.
Yep. Touch on that? Yes, no? No? Okay. Just a point. Okay. Okay, well, for me, when Peter brought this to me, I almost choked on my coffee that I was having that morning because of the cost. But then the more we sat and talked and discussed about all of these things, the more I realized that, you know what, this is the direction this council has said we want to go in. And we have been very successful already in a year's time. The numbers we got last council meeting with our building stats, I mean, they're through the roof. And you just saw some numbers tonight from our economic development. We're moving in the right direction. And you can tell by the buzz around town that we've made some pretty bold decisions, but people are pretty darn happy and impressed about it because we're being talked about. We're being looked at saying, see what Leamington is doing. So if we're going to continue that momentum, we need to have the people here to help us get there. And that's where I'm coming from on this. And I think the conversation we've had tonight, and in fact the conversation all of you have had behind my back, I mean individually, it's great.
Not more than 2 people.
No, exactly. And as long as you're not lining up votes, you know, you're okay. But I'm glad you're talking with each other about these things, asking these questions, and coming into Peter and asking the questions. And these directors are the ones you should be talking to as well, to see, you know, what does this really mean to your department, to you? How's this going to help me? How's it going to help everybody out there? So I think it's great. And Councillor Jacobs and others have mentioned that we've held our tax increases to less than 1%, if not 0%, for 5 years. And we've seen other municipalities who have said they've held it down to 0 for 8 years in a row. And you look at their physical infrastructure, and it's suffering greatly. Whether they admit it or not, it's suffering greatly. And in my opinion, holding ours down the way we had to, though that was our decision, and rightfully so. Our infrastructure is our people. In 2013, we had that consultant come in here and tell us, right when we had been told when Heinz was closing, and all of us were sick to our stomachs on that, thinking, man, what are we going to do? What's the future hold for us? We didn't know. And this consultant, he pared his results back in a big way and still said we needed 4 more people just to do what we're doing now. And we still said no. And I think we've all seen the results of that. And having Peter come on board, he's made some strategic moves with the staff and administration that has helped us meet some of those positions. And like the Deputy Mayor said, through some attrition, we've been able to accomplish the same thing. But we're at a point now, ladies and gentlemen, where either we do it or get off the pot. That's where I am on this. We've seen the numbers. We are successful. We are moving in the right direction. Put on the big boy pants. This is the time when we decide the future of this municipality. Not just for the next 40 years, not just for 1 more year, but for a lot of years to come. But for me, the summary is this. I think this decision tonight is really, really easy. And I don't mean I'm not belittling any of the comments or questions or concerns because they're all really valid. Peter's written them down. I've written them down. You've got them written down. And I think these are answers we need before we get to finalizing our budget. But that's the thing. First paragraph. To recommend council approve new full-time positions, yada, 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 in the office of the CEO in principle, and to approve the new organizational restructuring as of 2016 budget approval. And the final paragraph, I get down to it real quickly here, in the recommendation, and that the related costs be added to the respective departmental operating budgets for 2016 subject to the 2016 budget approval. So Deputy Mayor, you're right. Even if we say yes to all this tonight, and come February or March or whenever we're going to get our budgets, we all still have that ability to say, yeah, no, we're not doing this. And we did it before. We did the 2313 consultants report in principle, and then we said no at the budget time. So we do have that authority and that power. It's our right. So I'm just saying, tonight it's just for that purpose, is just to say, on principle, we agree we need to do this kind of stuff. Come back to us with numbers. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we'll have a more accurate idea of numbers in at budget time, as far as even what our tax amount will be coming in. And I feel much better about that. I'm glad that we had this opportunity to hash this out before budget.
Mm-hmm.
But we all have to remember where we were in our minds when it comes to the actual numbers when we get them. With that, despite my reservations, I'll move the recommendation.
Supported by Councillor Jacobs. I see Councillor Dunn has his hand up.
Through you, Your Worship. My approving it in principle, I understand the positions, and I understand with the economic development and tourism and having somebody that, I understand that. But the tax base and raising the taxes, that's where my concern is, and we'll have that at budget time. Then I'm confident that we can sit down and handle that out. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Because there will be numbers coming forward in budget deliberations. I know that we have another year of savings coming on our policing costs. We got it last year, we're getting more this year, we're getting more the year after that. It's just continually declining. So we are making savings in efficiencies, as people say around here. We've already gone and done the RFP for our insurance costs. And all of us know that that's a significant savings. So there are all sorts of things that our department heads are going to be looking at to make sure that council says yes to these employees for them, because it will just take that load off of their staff and get us what we want in the end result. So, yeah, come budget time, we get to say yay or nay. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wasn't sure if I could speak at this moment, but
Well, if it's to the motion.
yes,
So, yeah.
and I won't be supporting it, but I do want to say, if we had a magic wand, and I too agree with this in principle for the most part, but this is asking us for 2016. In 2016, I guess I don't agree with it in principle for 2016. So I can't vote in good faith and say I support the recommendation for 2016. So I won't be supporting it.
I guess I don't understand what you're saying. Like,
The recommendation here is
Yep.
saying, do we agree in principle for 2016? Right here. I don't agree with this for 2016, not all of it here tonight. So I won't be voting in favor of it. To say that I said I was intrigued by the tourism officer. I am, definitely. I think it's a great thing. But I think that's not in 2016.
Okay.
The bylaw enforcement officer, I'm in
Not
support of
sure.
that too,
Yeah.
but not in 2016.
okay.
So I don't feel comfortable supporting the, that's how my vote will be reflected.
Sure, okay. Mr. Neufeld.
I just have one more comment for council, and it's not to try and change your minds one way or the other. I knew this was going to be a difficult decision for you.
Yeah.
And I knew that we'd have this kind of healthy exchange of ideas. But the most important thing that I want you to take away from this report is that this CAO will never walk away from an important issue, even if it means that council will be stirred up. Because I still wholeheartedly believe that this is all in the best interest of the municipality, and if I didn't, I wouldn't have brought it forward.
Yep. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further comments, questions in regard to that? Councillor Verbeke? Brenda.
If you could raise your hands and leave them up when I ask for all those in favor. Councillor Jacobs, Mayor Patterson, Deputy Mayor McDonald, Councillor Dunn. All those opposed? Councillor Hammond, Councillor Wilkinson, and Councillor Verbeke. Vote 4-3, the motion carries.
Okay. Thank you very much, Council. Good work. Good work. No, it's just good work. All right, next report is one regarding Milo Road drainage works. Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to report on proposed drainage works to manage some surface water within the Milo Road right-of-way, just north of K Avenue, abutting properties 322 and 324 Milo Road, and to seek council's approval to proceed with the project and to obtain council's approval to enter into a mutual drainage agreement. It was brought to my attention that surface water from Milo Road right-of-way was draining overland away from the road and through the parking lot of 324 Milo Road and then into Wheatley Harbor. And I'll try to point that out. I'm talking about this area of Milo Road here. It was reported to me that it was collecting in an area here and then draining through the parking lot and making its way out into the harbor by this property owner. So staff had a look at it and we did some investigating and found that surface water in this area is managed by 2 roadside catch basins near the driveway to 324 Milo Road, and there's no direct connection to any drainage system. They simply drain the water simply drains into some catch basins in this area and then crosses the road to the west and then just is designed really to just soak away into the ground through some soak away pits that seem to be plugged and in disrepair. Generally, this segment of Milo Road is flat, but slightly higher than the surrounding land, which causes the surface water to shed off the road and onto private property. The owner of 24 Milo Road is no longer willing to accept this water, and even in his opinion, it's damaging his driveway and his parking lot. Our investigation leads me to believe that Milo Road is indeed assessed into the Pulley Road municipal drainage system, which drains by gravity into Lake Erie. And in my opinion, Milo Road does require an improved drainage infrastructure as soon as possible, and we'd like to convey the water over to the Milo Road drainage system. But before making that recommendation, we did review several options that I did put in my report. The first being that we would add some catch basins along this side of Milo Road, and that we would create a swale along the west side of Milo Road to the south, and then cross into the Pulley Road drainage system is here that outlets into Lake Erie. That ultimately, as you see in the report, turned out to be our preferred solution to this. We also looked at some additional catch basins and piping or swales that would drain into the Beach and K pumping station. This area is a separate drainage system, and all this area drains into a pumping station that then lifts water into Lake Erie. Our investigation just suggested that the pumping scheme doesn't have the capacity to take any additional water. We also looked at additional catch basins and additional soak-away type sewers, but we've determined that those systems aren't really appropriate for this area. We also considered a direct connection from the existing catch basins here directly through this parking lot and into through a new outlet into Lake Erie, which would likely prove to be cost prohibitive, and it would require permitting, as it is a new outlet into Lake Erie, and an expensive restoration through the parking lot. We also found that any improvement that we do here would also improve drainage along the entire length of the road by getting water off the road into this swale and then down and out into Lake Erie. So there would be a benefit to a greater length of the roadway. We've talked with the owner of Milo Foods, and they are prepared to allow us to construct this swale along the west side of Milo Road, subject to entering into a mutual drainage agreement. We've looked at the cost of the system, and we feel it's approximately $35,000 to do the construction work and about $500 to register the drainage agreement. The 2015 roadside drainage budget is fully expended as planned work that we had already planned for in 2015. So we are recommending that this work be funded through the engineering reserve account, which really is designed to manage in-year unplanned demands such as this and partially fund large capital works projects. For Council's information, the balance of the engineering reserve is $1.4 million. So I am recommending that the Milo Road drainage improvement be approved and that $36,000 in funding be approved from the engineering reserve, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into mutual drainage agreements with Milo Foods.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments, council? Councilor Verbeke?
Thanks for the mayor. So, Alan, this is all road water?
Yes. The plan is to collect the road water from this area of Milo Road and then the west side of Milo Road all the way down here.
So there's no assessments?
That's correct.
When are you going to do it?
We're receiving quotes by Friday this week, and we hope to have the work done before the end of the year if council approves the work. And as I understand it, the corn just came off that field.
I'm in support of it. I'll move the recommendation.
Okay. Support by Councilor Wilkinson. Councilor Jacobs?
Just, Alan, is any of that water coming from Chatham Kent, or is that all our water? No, I mean, like, is it coming down, like, from the industry that's on the other side of Milo Road there and so forth?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the entire length of Milo Road is in Leamington, but there is a hump in the road about here by the Ministry of Natural Resources. So water from about here goes north, and then the rest of the water flows south.
Okay, I just thought if we were getting some from Chatham Kent, they'd maybe kick in the pot a little bit, but thank you.
Yeah, somehow I don't think that would work. Anyway, so we have a motion on the floor. Any questions? All in favor of that motion? Carried. Next report is one regarding the waterfront demolition. 5 Foster and Mr. Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. The report on the agenda for tonight is to seek council authorization to demolish 2 buildings on 5 Foster. The municipality came to own the buildings when they purchased the property. There's no intent in the municipal plan to keep the buildings, and therefore we recommend that the buildings are demolished, and we would like to do that this year so that the buildings don't have to be winterized, and we can mitigate some potential liability and frankly get rid of abandoned, boarded up buildings. We certainly don't need more of those. Administration had discussions about the facilities and could they have some potential interim use between now and the date when a larger plan is developed. However, after a tour of the facilities, we basically deemed that there's no use that that could be made of those buildings. The best thing to do with the buildings is demolish them. So I noted that in the report. One of the considerations, again, when we were discussing this had to do with Habitat for Humanity. When we looked at the buildings, I looked at it, and we made a judgment that basically said there's nothing in here worth salvaging, frankly. However, it was that question was posed to me. A local citizen, somebody that I know and respect, asked me, did you consider offering Habitat an opportunity to take a look? And as I was saying the words that we looked at it, I looked at it and said there's no salvage value. I realized, well, there's no harm in letting Habitat come in and have a look. That's certainly not a judgment call that I should make. They're in that business. So one of the things I would like to do in this recommendation is to add a line to the recommendation that basically says in that Habitat for Humanity be given the opportunity to remove any items from the buildings prior to demolition. So I'll ask that that be added, and I can provide that information to Brenda. We have received some quotations prior to bringing this to demolish the buildings. Of course, once you demolish the buildings, then you need to do some site restorations, and we'd also like to do just some minor site improvements. Essentially, the idea, we would like the lands to be in a state where the public could walk across and maybe sit on some picnic tables, have some usable green space for the spring of 2016. And therefore, we're recommending that the council give authorization to demolish the two buildings and that $30,000 be approved from the contingency reserve fund for the project, as well as the additional language regarding habitat.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Rob, what about the gazebo down by the walkway? Is that going to stay, or are you going to, it's gone as well?
Through Mayor Patterson, we're going to demolish it. We're likely going to use our public works staff to tear that down.
So it's not part of this contract then?
That wouldn't be part, no. We think we can, we've taken a look at that, and we think we can do it internally.
Councillor Verbeke?
Thank you, Worthy Mayor. Rob, to you, the 30,000, is that above what the demolition is?
Mayor Patterson, that is to demolish the two facilities, to restore the site and do some additional work. So we will not spend more than 30,000 on the site, and at the end of the project, the buildings will be gone, the site will be restored, and we'll do some minor site improvements.
Okay. Councillor Hammond?
Worthy Mayor, thank you. Rob, I had two questions, one of which you answered already about allowing Habitat to take a look at it. The other is, who have you looked at to do the demolition for you?
Through you, Mayor Patterson, I know Gary Emery, our facilities supervisor. He's the one looking after the quotations. I believe he's got quotes from, is it Gagne? There's another local one, and then there's one, I believe Jones may be the other one. But he is looking after the quotation. There'll be minimum 3 quotations on it.
Thanks, Rob. I'll move the motion.
So that would be the amended motion.
The amended motion.
Yes, okay. Supported by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. There are no matters for approval. Other matters for consideration, there are none. No closed session this evening, but we do have consideration of bylaws. Ms. Percy?
Bylaw 51915 being a bylaw to confirm the council proceedings from the meeting held November 9th, 2015.
Looking for mover and seconder. Councillor Verbeke and Deputy Mayor. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? Opposed? And carried. We have notice of motion, though, that needs to be brought forward this evening. In the past, it's been the mover who has read it, and is that how we'll be doing it this evening as well? Okay. As much of it as you want.
Okay, for the notice of motion, I'll read the last couple of little paragraphs. And it starts with number C 403-14, that report ENG 2714 dated November 4th, 2014, regarding Seacliff Drive East and Bevel Line change of stop control be received, and that was carried. And whereas it is now requested that a peer review of the traffic engineer's report on the Seacliff Drive and Bevel Line intersection be undertaken, and that all costs associated with this review be charged to account 1070603000001-60020-7630. Notice of motion presented to council is November 9th, 2015.
Okay. And a notice of motion already has the seconder to it, so then I will simply open it up to the floor for council discussion. No? I'm sorry? Oh, to be debated at the next meeting. I'm sorry. I'm one ahead of myself. All right. Very good. Can we? I guess we can. Yep. Mr. Neufeld.
A peer review generally is just taking the report and asking somebody with the appropriate qualifications to look at it and say that that's an appropriate answer, or no, this is not quite right.
No.
Okay. Now we're into open session then. Anything from council? Councillor Hammond?
Your Worship, thank you. Just a reminder, this Wednesday will be the Remembrance Day Parade leaving from the Legion at 10 o'clock for all of those who wish to attend.
So it leaves at 10.
Yeah, about
Okay.
10 or 10:30.
Well, that's,
I say 10.
That's 30
I say
minutes.
10 because if you're talking to the fellows from the fire department, they won't get there on time.
Okay, so that was going to be a question of mine, though, is so we need to be there before 10 or there at 10?
They're at 10.
They're at 10, okay. Thank you. No,
No.
not
At
the
the
Legion.
Legion.
On John Street. Yeah, that goes from the Legion on John Street, down Erie Street, across Mill, and then, yep. Okay. Very good. Anything else? Open session? Nope. Then nothing from admin? Nope. So we'll do announcement of upcoming meetings then, Tuesday, November 10th, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, 7 p.m. in the West End Boardroom, and Monday, November 16th, council meeting right back here in Chambers. Statement members non-debatable. Councillor Verbeke?
No, there's another date, worthy Mayor. It's Thursday, December the 12th. If anybody's interested in attending an IRCA meeting, you're more than welcome to come.
Okay. Quickly for me then, Wednesday, November the 4th, all of us, and that was really wonderful to see everybody from council make it there, attended the dedication of the Rick Atkin Park, attended by many local citizens, former staff members, current staff members. It was just all around wonderful, and I thank the organizers for looking after everything. Thursday, November the 5th, a number of us were able to attend the Best Western Grand reopening, and quite an impressive facility. Talk about tourism, that is a destination spot for sure now. So we've certainly got something to recommend when need be, along with all of our other motels that we have in this town. And the last thing is, and maybe known to many of you, maybe not known to any of you, is Kevin Black, our former reporter, and I know poor old Ricardo got stuck with us now, but Kevin Black is leaving employment at Blackburn Radio and moving on to bigger and better things for himself. So from all of us to Kevin, farewell and good luck. So, oh yeah, CAO just reminded me too that Peter and Janine and I will be heading up to meet with the mayor and development person in St. Mary's and the CAO to take the information of what we did, what the steps we took after the Heinz announcement, to share that with them in hopes that it will benefit them in some way. So, well, it's non-debatable. So, all right.
I just want to say that I compliment you, the CAO, and Janine. And in fact, after that article was in the newspaper, I've had, I think it was 3 different comments today. What a great thing that is, that our staff is moving up in that particular area to assist them. So
Yep.
kudos to you guys.
Very good. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Verbeke, Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? Anybody opposed? No.